Thank you for tuning in to our pre-recorded webinar on the New York State Workers' Compensation Drug Formulary. During this session, we'll be covering the formulary features, important implementation dates, and insight into IWP's internal workflow. Before we kick off, I'd like to introduce you to today's speakers. Danielle Jaffe is IWP's Director of Legal and Government Affairs. She has extensive knowledge of healthcare, workers' compensation, and pharmacy law, and is a licensed attorney in Massachusetts and Connecticut. As IWP's Director of Pharmacy, Neil Welch oversees IWP's dispensing, clinical, and pharmacy regulatory responsibilities of all 50 states. Neil is a Director of Pharmacy and currently holds a pharmacist license in 20 states. Michael Sposito is IWP's Manager of Claim Operations. He specializes in the complexity of litigated workers' compensation claims and is a licensed attorney in Massachusetts. Now I'd like to turn it over to Danielle to walk you through the drug formulary details.
New York State, like many other states in the country, has been considering a workers' comp drug formulary for several years now. But back in June of this year, the New York Workers' Compensation Board released official regulations and an official drug formulary for New York workers' comp claimants. The way New York's formulary is set up, the medications listed are medications that don't require prior authorization for treatment. They're considered medications that are effective and appropriate for the treatment of illnesses and injuries related to workers' compensation. The details of the New York Workers' Comp drug formulary are a little more nuanced than they are in other states. One key feature is that there's a single effective date for all injuries. So this means a worker that is injured prior to the formulary being in place will still be subject to the formulary regulations as though they were injured after its effective date. It'll also change the way providers are treating their patients because they'll have to factor in some things they're not used to working with. So the key thing is they will have to seek prior authorization for medications not on the formulary. They'll also need to seek prior authorization for formulary brand drugs when a generic is available, combination products, and brand name drugs when generic is commercially available in a different dosage or strength. They'll also need prior authorization for compound medications. So this is something providers are going to have to think about when treating their patients to determine if a formulary drug will meet the needs of that patient or if they need to go through the process of prior authorization to make sure that their patients are getting the adequate medical treatment they need. Opioid medications are also subject to the drug formulary. Fills are going to be limited to a 7-day supply during those first 30 days following an injury. After that, they will still require prior authorization and a refill or renewal, so a patient that's already on an opioid prior to the formulary being in place will need to get prior authorization before June 5th of 2020. And the regulations are clear that they expect providers to seek that prior authorization and carriers to address it well ahead of that date. Another key feature of the New York formulary to keep in mind is the 2 effective dates. Beginning December 5th, 2019, all new prescriptions must comply with the formulary, which means if a provider wants to prescribe a medication that is off formulary, they will need to seek prior authorization with the insurance carrier before writing the prescription. The other date is June 5th of 2020, which will require that all refills and renewal prescriptions be subject to the drug formulary. This gives providers who are treating patients currently 6 months to adopt either the formulary or seek prior authorization for those patients currently receiving non-formulary medications. I'm now going to turn it over to Neil Welch, our Director of Pharmacy Operations, to review the features of the New York formulary.
As Danielle mentioned, there's 3 distinct phases of treatment for the New York formulary. Phase A, which is considered the first 30 days following an injury on until an insurance carrier accepts the claim. And that's limited to a 30-day supply. Phase B, which is after 30 days of an injury after the claim is accepted, up to a 90-day supply of the medication. Phase B can continue in perpetuity as long as it's an accepted injury. Perioperative phase is the third phase, and that's 4 days before and after a surgery. Some of the formulary-specific features is the inclusion of step therapies. Medications labeled as second-line treatment will require a trial of a first-line drug, and we can spend in the next slide going into some detail on that. Injury-specific, yes, drugs on formulary are many drugs. So some drugs, such as Coumadin or warfarin, is only on the formulary for hip or groin injuries or knee injuries, but not for any other injury type. So certain medications are only approved for certain injury body part types. If a DAW or dispense is written, so that's for brand name drugs, it will require prior authorization when a generic is available. So if both a brand and a generic are available, the brand would require prior authorization. This slide is an example of one page of the New York Drug Formulary. It sorts each medication by therapeutic class, then lists its generic name, and displays whether it's a Phase A, Phase B, or perioperative covered drug. It also displays what body part injury the drug is accepted for. If there's no yeses for a certain drug class, it's accepted for all body part injuries. One feature of the New York formulary that's not shown on this slide is some medications are listed as second-line treatments. Second-line treatments require a trial of a first-line treatment before they'll be able to be approved using the formulary. The entire New York formulary is available on the New York Workers' Comp website. At IWP, our pharmacists are specially trained in the New York formulary and will be available for any help that physicians or providers need. Michael Esposito, our manager of claims, will discuss how IWP can work with providers to navigate the formulary better.
If a prescriber sends a prescription to IWP for a non-formulary medication, an IWP pharmacist will contact said prescriber to discuss changing the non-formulary medication to a formulary medication that will not need prior authorization. If the prescriber agrees to change the medication to a formulary medication, IWP will be able to provide said medication to the injured worker. If the prescriber will not consider a change to a formulary medication, IWP will not be able to provide the medication to the injured worker until the prescriber follows the New York Work Comp Board process that results in the prescriber receiving a prior authorization approval from the insurance carrier or the New York Work Comp Board. If the prescriber is seeking to provide a non-formulary medication, the prescriber would seek a Level 1 review through the insurance carrier or self-insured employer, and an answer shall be provided within 4 calendar days approving or denying the prior authorization request. If the prescriber is denied the Level 1 prior authorization approval, the prescriber can appeal to a Level 2 review to the insurance carrier or self-insured employer's physician within 10 calendar days, and an answer shall be provided within 4 calendar days approving or denying the prior authorization request. If the prescriber is denied prior authorization approval when seeking a second level review, the prescriber can appeal to a Level 3 review to the medical director's office within 10 calendar days, and an answer shall be provided approving or denying the prior authorization request within an expected 5 to 7 calendar days. This decision shall be deemed final and binding. Please be advised that if a Level 1, Level 2, or Level 3 review goes unanswered after 4 calendar days, the prior authorization request may be approved by an order from the board. Upon receiving any prior authorization approval from the Level 1, Level 2, or Level 3 review, please immediately contact IWP by way of phone or email at nyformulary@iwpharmacy.com so that IWP can provide the approved medication to the injured worker. IWP's clinical pharmacy experts will always be available to discuss alternative treatment options to ensure the injured workers receive approved medication. IWP is truly the expert on workers' compensation pharmacy and is here to make this process as smooth as possible for providers, and encourage you all to connect with IWP's team during this transition.
Thank you to our speakers. With the formulary fast approaching, IWP will be offering a clinical in-service with our team of pharmacists for medical providers with questions specific to the drug formulary. More information will be released within the coming weeks. If you're interested in speaking with our pharmacy team directly on questions relating to the drug formulary, we encourage you to submit your questions through email at nyformulary@iwpharmacy.com. Your designated IWP territory manager is also at your disposal should you have any further questions. We hope this session has given you a glimpse into what you can expect from the New York State Workers' Compensation Drug Formulary. Thank you for joining us.